So my company's called Incented. Who am I? I'm just a random German dude living in the desert Southwest in the US now on a pursuit of solitude. But what gets me out of bed in the morning is that I want to live in a world where really everyone can work on whatever they're most passionate about while being rewarded equitably for what they do, right? And that is a lot easier said than done. If some of you, I think, in here have the pleasure of just having made that hard decision to not being driven by money first, but by your passion first, and you'll figure the rest out, right? And I think that's what unites us all here. That's what gets me out of bed in the morning. So I decided to try to make a dent in that vision statement through grants. Grants are a great vehicle to try to pursue it. However, there is problems in grants, and I'll talk about that. But in Web3, so the blockchain world, right, which is where I feel most home these days, there's conservatively estimated about 10 billion in grant money flying around right now looking for a home. But getting a slice of that is incredibly hard. But in the words of grant funders themselves, and just this morning I talked to someone who echoed that even in the traditional nonprofit world, they very often don't know where the money is going, much less what it is doing. And well, that's a problem, right? Wouldn't it be awesome if we could actually keep track of that money and maybe even measure what it does, what impact it has? Well, of course it would, right? Like, so that's exactly what Incented does. Incented makes grant money trackable. But not only do we help these funders track their money, we also ensure that their recipients coordinate efficiently while, say it with me, being rewarded equitably. Correct. Excellent. Probably can't hear it. Everyone was screaming just now because you get it. So you ask, well, how? How are you doing that? Well, that's a good question. It starts with a core belief in Incented that the community should be involved at every step of every project, right? The community is different for every project. It could be the fans, the users, customers, investors, even. Hell, your mom, right? As a matter of fact, your mom is usually your biggest supporter. If she can financially, she probably would, but we need to give them a voice. That is what Incented does. Again, you ask, all right, that sounds great, but how? Well, at the core of our protocol is the carrot and stick mechanism. We very strongly, again, believe that we need to incentivize every interaction along the way for every protocol from users, fans, even core members, right? Like your employees or your partners in your projects. And we're doing that through the carrot and the stick. So you're incentivized to participate, say, help prioritize a roadmap you're working on by being able to get a slice of the reward that is given out. However, you're disincentivized to say something stupid or just chase the rewards by a certain threat of a slash, right? So you vote actually with some sort of digital asset in Web3. That could be any token, really. Our tokens, the carrot token, right? No surprise there, probably. And so again, we strongly believe that there needs to be an upside at every step of the way, but also a real downside for making, well, stupid decisions, right? So Incented at its core is a protocol approach, right? So we're going bottom up. We want to enable applications such as grant funding, even VC, even something like Artizen to make better decisions. And at the core, we believe there really is just two types of interactions. Interactions toward a project are either contributory or confirmatory, right? You write a proposal, you do actual work, that's a contribution. You vote on something that should be done or should be funded for that matter, or you validate what has been done, that's a confirmation, right? And in the scope of grants, which is what we're focusing on, you can kind of see the breakdown here, right? However, for a specific use case, grant funding would look like this, right? You apply for a grant, that's a contribution. We vote, the community votes on applications, that's a confirmation, and so forth. I don't need to read it all out to you. But enough theory. Let's look at this in a real world example, right? So the example we want to walk through real quick is the construction of the Artizen headquarters in the desert, because that's where I live and that's where I think everyone should live because it's a great life. This is our budget. These are the requirements, the hypothetical requirements maybe Rene would set. So
Oh, man, are we just
now,
hatching something with this example? Like, I think Artisan should have a headquarters in the desert. Yeah, let's learn
I
about it.
mean, I'm down for it. There is an acre down the road I could, offer up for it. So let's build a house. In Incented, this would look like, right? RFP, request for applications, RFA in this case. So the applications roll in. This is all what we see. Most of them make sense. Well, maybe a big ass Bitcoin sign. Not sure if we didn't need this right now. This is exactly why we involved the community, right? Because the next step is to qualify these applications. We vote and we prioritize with confirmatory interaction. And we decided that the first 5 steps we need to execute, the hot tub is an absolute must if you know Renee, and a survey, all of the rest makes sense, right? In that order, we decided as a community that is the way we need to do it. Now, a step further, anyone, if the community is structured that way, if you decide your project is entirely open, you could literally invite anyone to apply their passion, right, and build the walls. Someone has got to be passionate about building walls. So they do that. They submit some sort of proof that they built the wall, and then again, we ask the community to confirm the construction of that wall. That could be as simple as looking at the picture they submitted, right? And you confirm that, by the way, by voting again with your hard earned money yourself to convey your conviction about that particular contribution. So you better be sure. So maybe you want to go out and actually look at the wall instead of just trusting the picture, right? It's about as much conviction as you could build. So that's pretty much, I know that's short and there's a lot more to it. And if anyone has any questions, please reach out. But I want to end on the passion, my mission statement again, what gets me out of bed in the morning. Thanks, everyone.
Amazing. Sven, what a great presentation. I love seeing your pitch evolve and strengthen over time. You've been working on this, it feels like for about a year, is that right?
On this revision, yes.
Yeah. Is this something that you wanna talk about that we see up on the screen? This is
Yeah, I just
Incented
wanted
live.
to throw it up if we have time. That is
Yeah.
live. That is the current product. I just threw some dummy data in here. So this is the grant fund for Artizen, the hypothetical one. This is all on testnet as of right now. As I mentioned, we'll go live in end of February. But here's 2 applications in here. We are facilitating structured applications. We are facilitating the movement of the grant funding for these applicants. So let's say this application would win, which, well, accidentally or coincidentally, I'm the proposer of, then I would get the funds. And the nice thing about the protocol approach is that as soon as an application is funded, we essentially turn that application itself into an incented project, which then runs like the same, 4-step approach, right? Propose, prioritize, contribute, validate. In public, they can decide on who can contribute, they can decide on who can vote. But simplest form, it would just be anyone who holds Arts token, for example, in the case of Artizen.
Cool. Well, I've got a couple of questions. I'm gonna lead by my selfish interests because I'm, the one on the line here. If anybody has their own questions, please put them into the chat on X. And Scott, if you could keep an eye on that and call them out if you see
Absolutely.
any come in. I think the bit of this that's most interesting to me is the carrot and the stick when it comes to voting. So I'll say what I think the idea is, and you can correct me because I think it's a really powerful one. So, like on Artisan, we have people that submit projects, the community votes, and then we take the top 30% that gets the most votes. In Incented, you have a similar mechanism. People are voting, but to vote, they are staking some collateral. They're putting some amount of money at risk. And if the decision proves to be a good one, they can make a little money on making good votes. And if the decision proves to be a bad one, a bad decision, then they lose that capital. Am I right so far? Is that would you say that's an accurate depiction?
That is an accurate depiction. I want to just point out one thing. So, how much you lose. So, yes, you're right. You need to put something at risk. So, I'm not a huge fan that the world works that way, but much seems to be driven by financial interests. So, we believe that in order to convey one of two things, either your desire of the existence of whatever is proposed in the case of an application, or your communication of your domain expertise is what you submit essentially through a vote if that vote has a risk associated with it, right? So yes, you're putting capital of some form at risk because you are going to potentially be slashed if you're wrong, and we can talk about what that
And
means.
slash just means
Um,
you lose the whatever capital you put up to do the
you lose
voting.
a piece.
Yeah.
Yeah, you lose a piece of that, and that 10%, for example, in your hypothetical match fund here or a grant fund here, is what you would lose, right? So if you put $100 into your vote, then if you're wrong, you lose 10 of that, and that's
Okay.
configurable. Again, protocol approach. Everyone needs different parameters.
And I know we've spoken about this before, but I think it's a sign that it hasn't stuck in my own head that it's worth exploring more, which is how do you decide or determine if it was a good decision or a bad decision? And maybe we could scope the example to how voting works on Artisan, where there's project proposals, and then people vote, and then there's a certain percentage of the top projects that get curated. Is that the fork in the road between like this was a good decision or a bad decision is if it gets curated, or is there some step down the road? Where does that good or bad decision validation determination happen?
Yeah. So again, in the future, there will be multiple ways on how decisions are made. For right now, in the protocol, we simply have a quorum based system. So as the grant program manager, you decide yourself what quorum needs to be reached in favor of any proposal or application, right? So what would make sense is 50%, 51%, right? Something like that. If we want to stick with general kind of let's vote in favor or against something.
Mhm.
And to be right, meaning getting a reward for your vote, you have to vote on the right side of the coin, right? So you vote either for or against the proposal, and both are actually incentivized. So you can be right in both directions. And for that to work, the vote's hidden. So yes, we are on
Interesting.
chain, everything's tracked, but the
So
vote
if I vote
can't
no,
be.
and that is on that's the majority, and the quorum is set at 50%, then I make some money. And if I vote yes, and it's on the right side, then I make some money. So it's just as long as I'm voting with the quorum. Yeah. So the fact that the vote would be hidden until the end, I suppose, is the key thing, so that
Yeah.
you're not going to. So in Artisan's case, like, because one of the things that Sven and I are talking about is whenever there's a project in Artisan that I love with a creator that I love, I'm always looking for ways to support. And with somebody that's building something so cool like this, I really want to find a way for Incented to become the protocol that powers our curation and voting as much as possible. And so in our system, if we were to adopt this methodology, it would be during the submission and review and voting period, we would hide how many votes each project has seen. So there wouldn't be really a leaderboard in that case. And everyone would just have to be making their own determination of what they think is the best project and the most likely, I suppose, also to get curated, right? I guess that'd be part of the game, right? Is that they could be thinking like, well, what is everyone else likely to think is the best? Let me vote that way.
Oh,
Well,
that's
interesting.
what we sort of want to. In most cases, there's an argument to be made to be public about votes, actually, and I'll get to that. But in most cases, we believe that we call it selective privacy, right? In
Mhm.
our protocol, we want to avoid that you're just betting on whatever looks most popular right now because you're chasing that little piece of the reward, right? At
Mm.
that point, you're not actually giving us either your conviction or your desire of the existence of the proposal, but you just chase the reward, and
What
that's
are
a
some
large
ideas
problem here.
for, yeah, just dealing with that problem? Do you have any thoughts?
Um, by hiding it, right? So,
Hiding it.
like
Okay,
our
gotcha.
current approach is hiding it. There's still a couple of arguments to be made that we still need to solve, like the whale problem, right? What if someone comes in and throws $1 million at it? But
Mm, mm, mm.
frankly, I would say that's an interesting psychological and game theory problem, right? Because that will still generate revenue on the protocol that will
Yeah.
in turn support projects on the protocol, right? Similar
Yeah,
to
well, and you
artists.
could, I mean, you could do something like what we do, which is quadratic voting, where,
Right.
whales who have a lot of money have a louder voice, but it's diminishing returns. You you
Correct.
know,
Yeah.
you sort of roll it off. Okay. Wow. Well, Sven, I love you and I love Incented. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you so much for giving me the stage.